Hey guys, what is up? Dave here, coming back to you with a brand new video on the channel. And today I kind of wanted to do, I guess this is sort of a react slash voiceover slash explaining it from a very hardcore Android user thing. This was the 30-day challenge is over video from Linus Tech Tips, where 3 of the employees at Linus Tech Tips switched over from iPhone to Android, and they were very heavy iPhone users. Wanted to see, the experiment was, is it actually as painful as people make it out to be? And overall, were they willing to keep the phone at the end of it? I don't know. So I wanted to go over this video and just, kind of point out some things that I noticed that you can actually kind of just either blame Google or blame Apple for, or it's just kind of like a lack of understanding because, wow, that's not a good freeze frame. There we go. But just kind of go over the things and, explain my side of things, or, how I think you can overcome some of these things. So basically 30 days ago, they all got to pick an Android phone that they wanted to go with and try for 30 days. So
transferring and setting up the device.
Hold on.
You chose the...
So Andy chose the Sony Xperia. She went with the Samsung Flip, and he went with the Google Pixel Fold, I want to say. Andy ended up actually switching to the Pixel. And I'll let him explain why he did, obviously, and then I'm going to give my 2 cents on it. But
Sony Xperia 1.5, but I couldn't help but notice during the month you had a Pixel 9 Pro. What actually happened?
The reason why I switched, mainly because I think this is like a engineering sample, so I can't really upgrade to like Android 15.
Let me explain. So, Sony is notorious for being very far behind on system updates. Not as bad as Samsung, at least in North America. Samsung right now, through Verizon and T-Mobile, is just now putting out beta 3 for Android 15, and we're about to have Android 16 drop. So Sony is very similar. They royally suck at providing full version updates to their devices. They make promises that say like, oh yeah, you'll get this many full version updates. But like, I've seen that promise broken, but I think since Sony is such a small company, they don't really get called out on it or sued for false advertising or anything like that. So Andy ended up switching over to the Pixel 9, and a large thing with the Android ecosystem too, the Android operating system with system updates, is if it is a carrier device, you need to wait for your carrier to basically put their spin and their flavor on. That's what Android calls it, is flavors, because they always name their versions after different foods or desserts. Think Android gingerbread, stuff like that. You need to wait for your carrier to put their spin on it. So like, I have a Galaxy Fold 6 now. Android 15 beta is not even available through AT&T. I can use the Verizon version, I can use the T-Mobile version and just disable their apps, but largely it's just not available. AT&T will probably be last to get Android 15 on this device, and I'll have to cross-flash it to a U1 firmware, which is just like the unlocked version of the phone. So Sony's very similar, and it also depends. I believe that is an unlocked one because they probably got it from a review sample. It's not because it's a review sample or a test device. It's because Sony just sucks at system updates. Google Pixel will always get the updates for Android first because Google treats Android the same way Apple does when it comes to the Pixels. They handle the operating system updates. Samsung and Motorola and OnePlus and all the others, they basically have to wait until they have their hands on the software, and then they have agreements with the cell phone carriers, unless it's an unlocked version, to basically, hey, now we can update. So, yeah. So,
Happened like once or twice the first day, and then I realized what happened. So,
Okay.
but I had to like kind of unlink it from.
Oh, what they're talking about here is iMessage. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have skipped. I should have just let it go because they went straight into the iMessage problem. So the iMessage problem on an iPhone is when you go from iPhone to Android, you need to make sure you unlink your cell phone number if you're keeping the same number from your iMessage. If you don't unlink your phone number from iMessage, your text messages from other iPhones are still going to go to iMessage, even if you don't have an iPhone anymore. And let me tell you, the people that use their phones for trade-ins and don't have an iPad or don't have a MacBook, it is much more difficult to undo that if you don't have an Apple device that already has your Apple account logged in, so you can undo the cell phone number thing with iMessage. A lot of the complaints throughout this video are because Apple makes things so difficult in comparison with Google, and they're not willing to play ball. It's a little bit ridiculous. iMessage is just, it's awesome. It's such an awesome feature. It's something I wish, Apple would be willing to play ball with and like shake hands with Google and be like, yes, we can do iMessage on Android. It was even supposed to exist. The APK has actually leaked, but it doesn't work, obviously, because as soon as they realized it leaked, they changed some stuff around and, obviously made it not work. So, and there's even been companies that have tried to make iMessage work on Android, and largely every time you need a MacBook or an Apple device to at least set it up. Once it is set up, you're good, and it'll forward to Android. But most of the time it doesn't work, and a lot of the functionality of iMessage also doesn't work, like playing the games or sending the GIFs or group chats. They talk about group chats at the very end of this, of how if you are on Android, you break the iMessage group chats and people will hate you. That is very true. This is why I keep my group chats on Facebook Messenger. So
My iPad and from everything, basically.
Got it.
I knew that I had to unlink it from my account before I started, so I didn't run into that issue.
One other experience you
see, yeah, he understood.
ended up talking to me about was you had an issue with languages on your phone.
Usually,
Oh, this is hilarious. This is something I'd never run into because I'm a stupid American. I can only speak one language, which is English, and boy, can I barely speak that, but I just said all of this very quickly, so maybe I can. Andy, however, speaks multiple languages. He knows English, he speaks Mandarin, and I think there's one other language he speaks, but I don't remember. Mainly what he talks about is putting his phone to have both language packs installed, but he keeps it primarily in English. I'll let him talk about it.
for all my devices, I set to like 2 languages, right?
Yeah.
So English as my primary. I set like the Mandarin on my Pixel as the secondary, and if I like talk to my Google Assistant in English, sometimes it replies in Mandarin.
So I've actually heard of this problem before with my friends who speak Spanish. They have the double language on their phone because, their grandmother maybe doesn't speak English or their parents are not great at speaking English or whatever. They will talk to their Google Assistant. I don't use my Google Assistant. It's dog shit. I'm going to admit it. I disable a lot of the Google stuff, actually, but we'll get into that later. The whole thing with, like, Google Assistant, it's so weird. It will kind of just pick and choose what language it wants to respond to you in, even if you're speaking the opposite language. So, like, one of my friends has 3 or 4 languages on his phone, and he'll speak in one language and he'll just pick one. He's got like a 25% chance on it picking the wrong language. It's insane. It's really stupid, and Google really needs to fix it.
So random, like sometimes like my Google Assistant like is Mandarin speaking, sometimes my Google Assistant is like English speaking. I'm like, make up your mind.
This issue does not exist with Siri, by the way. I will say that straight up. This is something that Google just needs to fix. It's a bug in the software. All software has bugs.
So you guys didn't have to deal with the multi-languages where you only had it set in English. How was the other setting up and transferring to your phone? We'll start with Tynan.
For me, the switchover wasn't too bad.
Apple makes this a nightmare. Fun fact, when Google initially wanted to make an app to allow switching from iPhone to Android instead of Android to iPhone. Obviously, both exist, and it's pretty easy to do. Apple makes it very simple. They have it built right into their system that they will detect you have an Android phone, and they will pull the data and move it all over. Clean and clear, super simple to use. Apple, however, will not play ball with Google. They make it a nightmare to move your data over. And it's so stupid, too. A fun fact about it is when Google first made the first app to do data transfer from iPhone to Android for people who wanted to switch from iPhone to Android or, whatever, Google actually had to find an exploit in iOS to allow the data transfer to fully function with like contacts and call history and text messages and photo gallery. They basically had to find an exploit in iOS. And I'm sure like legally they had to tell Apple about it, but the story is they didn't, and it still exists to this day, and Apple doesn't know how to fix it. I feel like if that was the case, Apple would have sued Google by now. So I don't believe that. I'm sure it's something that Apple probably knew or now knows because of Google, and they either fixed it or just allowed it. Because obviously you can still switch from iOS to Android and Android to iOS. But I find it very funny that it's easy to do. One of the biggest complaints, though, also with data transferring is not all the apps exist on the same platforms. Or like, God, I can't remember what her name is. She talks about how she uses her iCloud to log into a bunch of things. And if you're on Android or even on a Windows PC, for example, they just assume like, oh, you're on a Windows PC or, oh, you're on Android. Why would you want to log in with iCloud? The option just doesn't exist. So you can't log in unless you hope that the app creator or the software creator supports multi-login functionality. And a lot of software creators don't do that. So, for example, I have like a backup email for one of my logins. I don't remember which one. And I can actually log in with that or with Fingerprint, basically. And I do actually have an Apple account. There are some things that I log into with the Apple account, but they have backups where I can just do an email and a password so I can log into the same app on Android. But also, a lot of the apps don't even exist on Android, or the apps on Android don't exist on iPhone. So that makes it also more complicated. And even then, on top of that, sometimes the data doesn't transfer for the app, so you've lost your game saves, you've lost your app data saves, and some stuff doesn't transfer. Look at the gigantic freakouts in the Draggy community if you're part of the car community. The data doesn't transfer with Draggy. It's so stupid. If you get a new phone, the data doesn't transfer for the Draggy app, and you lose all your run data unless you put it up on their leaderboards. You have to manually pull the data, have root access on the phone, and have somebody like me basically restore your app data. It's really, really, really stupid. And there's a lot of apps that do that, but Draggy is the biggest one that comes to mind.
For the most part, it was pretty straightforward. I definitely had a little bit of
It's over.
So let's see what rating they give switching from Apple to Android, because I'll tell you, it's low.
With. How would you guys rate the Switch on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'd probably put it at like a 6 or a 7.
Okay.
I don't know, like maybe a 4. It was frustrating, but like
Okay.
doable.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the middle, like 5-ish.
Now we're
I'm not surprised by that. So let's see what this gets into, and I'll try to wrap up this video and go through this a little more quickly. I just have so much to say about Android in defense of it. I'm not trying to be Android fanboy. I understand that some people just need Apple. Like, Apple is better for a good chunk of people. I don't say iPhones are good for as many people as I used to say it was for. Like, for example, my dad just finally switched to an iPhone because my sister forced him to. Long, stupid story. I can't stand that woman. She basically made him switch to an iPhone and keep the iPhone, even though he hates it and he's the one paying the bill. He's been using Android since Android 4.0, so he's well versed in the Android ecosystem. I know how to make it work for him so it looks the same regardless of all these system updates and changes over the years. He can navigate a computer very well for being 83 years old, by the way. He's not tech illiterate like some people in that age group. He hates the iPhone. It's all gesture based now. There's no option to have a home button except for maybe the floating home button. He hates it. He hates the iPhone. He wants his 3 little buttons on the bottom back, and there's no way to do that on iPhone that I know of outside of a jailbreak tweak, basically. So
We're going to move on to the hardware, which I think is where I actually got the most positive feedback from you guys. So we're going to actually start.
So this I don't think is as important to watch during this video and give feedback on, because Android hardware and iOS hardware, yeah, people will claim like, oh, iPhone's better for this, this, and this. But even look at like, oh, what's his name? Oh no. DankPods. This is who I was thinking of. He made a video recently about why he's fixing his iPhone 15 Pro Max, and it's largely because of the cameras. He thinks the cameras on the iPhone 16 got worse, and that's definitely a good possibility. It wouldn't be surprising. And even in the Linus Tech Tips video, which is right here, they also talk. Andy is a huge film buff and like filming buff and photographer and stuff like that. He prefers the cameras on the Pixel 9 over the iPhone. And when they show a video somewhere in here of him like comparing, yeah, it's coming up. They show a video comparing the 16 versus the Pixel 9. I agree. The iPhone 16 video looks like a cell phone video. The here's side by sides. You know, everything's a little bit redder over here, a little bit stranger. I don't know. It's like it's trying to add too much color versus over here, like Elijah's a lot more of a natural skin tone versus right here, he looks kind of like a tomato. You know, you can just kind of see it in everybody. She also looks a little bit more tomato-ish versus, you know, actual natural skin color. It's very strange with the Pixel. And like, here's a video as well. Like, you'll see it in this. This looks way more like a cell phone video. This actually looks kind of like a camera.
People say, oh, iPhone has the best like video functionality. Yes, but the iPhone video looks like a phone video. This more like an action cam.
Like, you can even see it if you watch the 16 Pro video. There's like little stutters and blockiness of like from compression failure or something like that, probably, where it's, you know, just failing a little bit. Like, the movement is not as smooth as with the Pixel 9 Pro. There's weird little bumps and scrapes and weirdness that don't feel like a good camera like they advertise it to be. Pixel 9 definitely wins in the camera department. Other than that, though, the whole thing with like hardware, they talk about the volume buttons and power buttons, but like, I don't know, those are nitpicks in my opinion. Not a big deal. And then we're going to go with the Android experience now, because this is a big part of the video as well.
Even if we ignored, you know, that weird split keyboard issue, you actually.
So what he's talking about is on a folding phone, when you open this phone, it has, the keyboard is split, so you can actually hit the buttons better. Let me show you.
She brought up another
thing for the keyboards I was in a bit for
the problem that they're talking about. Where is the photo of the keyboard? The problem that they're talking about is with the keyboard, sometimes it'll try to predict what app you're in. So like, let's say you're in an email app, it'll predictively put an @ symbol, so you don't have to hit the symbol button and then hit @. It'll just put it there. It's really a lot more sporadic on Android than it is on iOS. iOS keyboard picks up what app you're in a lot better. The other thing they talk about is CarPlay. I have no experience with CarPlay. I usually delete Android Auto. I don't like it. I just Bluetooth my phone to my car and I go. So I don't really have much to say on that, but I do agree, looking at the picture of the interface with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, I would prefer this because I want the map to be the most of the screen it can be. This is better than this, 100%. And again, maybe there's different versions of CarPlay and there's different versions of Android Auto and there's different radios, there's different screen sizes, etc., etc., etc. Something Andy also goes into, though, is the heads-up display in his car will actually display data from Google Maps, whereas Apple CarPlay will not, which is really cool. The heads-up display in his car. So other than that, they basically just kind of talk about some other small things. They talk about the ads in the newsfeed. I'm going to give you a very simple solution to getting rid of this. You hold your finger down on the main screen for like 3 seconds. It puts you into launcher settings, and you can just disable the left swipe so you don't get the news feed. Like it's that simple.
It's fine. Second one is fine. Third one is ad. And if I go in here,
yeah, Android is full of ads. It's such a plague on Android. And my God, when I looked at my dad's Pixel 8a, it was just horrible in his navigation drop down. It was horrible. But the very simple thing that anybody with Android can do, and I recommend this to everybody, there is an app called Adaway. You can use it on a non-rooted device or a rooted device. I will admit it works better on rooted devices, but the non-root method is basically a local VPN, and it just kind of does what's called pie-holing or ad blocking at network level. And they just have a gigantic host block list that stuff can't get through. This is the best app on the planet. It works inside apps. It works in your web browser. It works pretty much everywhere. So this is something I highly recommend to everybody who has Android. Android is too full of ads. Do yourself a favor. Install the ad blocker. 100% install the ad blocker. But even then, like, Android also allows you to install different launchers. If you go to the Play Store and you search launcher, you get so many different apps. I'm using one right now. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's called Minimalist Launcher. Minimalist Launcher. What in the world? Where is it? This one. I'm using this, and I absolutely love it. It has been helping me immensely with like usage time on my phone and dropping it. I wish they showed better photos of what it looked like, but this is basically your main screen. You have a main screen where you have your favorite apps, and then you can also set times for each app, so like it'll stop you from using the app once you get to a certain point. And then you have your full list of apps, but you can also like hide it, rename, move to folders. On Samsung, you can do your secure folder and stuff. That's been my favorite thing. And that also gets rid of the ads inside, your actual launcher. So, because that launcher doesn't have any, which is cool. So that's another big thing that they also complained about. The other big thing with Android they talked about is like the email app. They kind of nitpicked away at the Gmail app, which is really dumb in my opinion, because again, you just go to the Play Store and you just search like Mozilla Thunderbird or Outlook, or like there's email apps galore that you can use on the Google Play Store. So that's another dumb nitpick in my opinion. It seems like whoever was trying to walk them through using this stuff and using these phones, I think also doesn't have a good enough amount of knowledge about Android to actually say anything and try to walk somebody through changing to Android. Other than that, that's pretty much it. I'll give you the, if you want the spoiler here. Stayed iPhone, stayed Android, which is exactly what Linus predicted a month ago. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I wanted to give my thoughts because obviously I know Android very well. I know Windows very well. I do know Apple very well as well because of working in data recovery and touching way too many grubby little iPhones to save my life. But yeah, this is just a fun video I wanted to do. I'll talk to you guys later. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out.